everybody.
And welcome to this week's edition of Hook, Line, and Striker.
I'm Josh.
And I'm Emily, and we are really excited to be here tonight. I know we're going to be talking all kinds of fish and all of that. But before we even get to that, I thought it was really great to mention, looking through, the Striker Facebook page, I'm sure it's advertised, other places too, but a lot of great clearance sales going on actually with Striker gear. So, this is the time of year to go in. There's summer options, there's winter options. So depending on what you're looking for, depending on what you want, all of that will be available. Check out the Facebook page because there's a really nice ad. Otherwise, if you, just want to go straight to the site, strikerbrands.com, and there's even a whole little clearance tab to make it easy for you and arranges it all right there for you to see. So with that, I guess events coming up, that varies by area, there's a lot going on these days. And otherwise the season is really starting to get going. So hear more about that. Let's bring in tonight's guest. So welcome, David Chong.
Hey, David.
Thanks guys. Thanks Josh. Thanks Emery. I was actually just on the Striker page today looking at some of the clearance stuff. They got some great stuff. Yeah, I'm gonna tell a lot of people, to go check it out. Predator suits at whatever 50% off, and awesome stuff.
Yeah, that's a really great point. I'm sitting here, I'm looking at the ad. They have all the summer stuff, and that's where kind of my mind goes. But yeah, some really great deals on ice suits. You're making a great point. So if you're the kind of person looking for a new suit this coming year, this is a great time to do that. Cool. So I guess, David, for people who don't know you at all, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, well, I'm from north of the border, so I live just north of Toronto in Ontario, Canada, and I've been, I guess, a professional angler up here for the better part of 30 some odd years. I hope that doesn't age me too much, but we've been doing this a long time. I fish all kinds of tournaments. I fish ice fishing tournaments. Perch tournaments, crappie tournaments, walleye tournaments, pike tournaments, and of course, bass tournaments. Bass is my first love, but I love fishing for everything. I'm hoping probably sometime this week to get out for some steelhead in the rivers too. So I love to fish. I just love to fish. So it's work with my sponsors. I missed the shows this year. We talked about that. Before we came on, I did miss a lot of the shows that we normally have up here. This is the first year we lost them all, so because of this COVID thing. But then we get to do great things like this, do more online stuff, with you guys, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Plus it's really fun for us to be talking with somebody who is such a multi-species angler. There's a lot of people out there who don't even have the opportunity to do all of that. So, that's going to be a really fun thing. And, with that, it reminds me also to welcome everybody who is at home. So, if you have questions about, whatever species it is or whatever fish or catch or tactic it is, let us know that. And as we're talking, we can certainly work that into our conversation. So. You were talking though that right now is perch. Is that true?
The perch fishing. Well, I live about. I can be on Lake Simcoe in about half an hour, and Lake Simcoe not only is it I'm sure you guys have heard about it for ice fishing. It is one of the most famous ice fishing lake, but it is a world-class perch fishery. I mean, we're lucky up here that we have actually Lake Erie, Lake Simcoe, Lake St. Clair. All three of those are like world-class perch fisheries, and like days of 200 to 400 fish are very common, and fish up to over 2 pounds. It's just a blast. It's a lot of fun.
That's awesome.
That is really awesome. So, before I ask more about the perch, I guess one of the first things I'm noticing that about what you're saying, it's a lot of big water. So as far as, navigating and finding fish and all of that, can you tell us a little bit about how you go about that?
Well, the nice thing about perch fishing, believe it or not, is they tend to actually show up in the same areas every year on this particular body of water. And there's a lot of, for people who fish Lake Simcoe, they'll know there's ramps, like literally I can launch and within 5 minutes be where I want to fish, So the only thing, of course, again, you mentioned they are big bodies of water. So, you got to pay attention to the weather, how much wind there's going to be, You know, you don't want to get. I have seen water spouts out on Lake Simcoe, so you don't want to be out there when it's like that. But like I said, you don't have to really go far. There's lots of people out there who, well, when I was out on Saturday, I couldn't believe the number of kayakers that were out. You know? Yeah, and lots of people in like 12, 14 foot. But we had a nice day, very little wind, you know, pretty calm, and you can pretty well go anywhere you want. So if you pick your days and you know, are smart about it, it's not really a problem. But you know, as far how do we find them? Ooh, this is it changes every year. Okay, it's different, even though they're in the same general areas. When they're in those areas, changes every year. Like for instance, on Saturday, I had to go check an area we won a perch tournament on maybe 2 years ago, and there was not a perch to be seen there. It was wow. And it was interesting because the lake was that part of the lake was so clear I could see the bottom in 45 feet of water. Wow. If I would have thrown a quarter over in like 30 feet of water, you could have seen where there was heads or tails. And hence, you know, when it's that clear, they're typically, you know, not there. I like to look for water with a bit of stain in it, you know, and we have been fishing relatively deep. You can get them real shallow this time of year too if you get the right water conditions, but they're spawning, so they're looking for bottom where there's a bit of vegetation, some sand grass. You know, that's what they want to hold their eggs and stuff like that. But like I said, I think for, you know, the key really is that there needs to be a little bit of color to the water. If it's too clear, they're just they'll go elsewhere. You know, they can move. They can, you know, they have fins. They can swim. So.
You know, that's a really great point. And I kind of joke about that a lot for, you know, spot fishing, you know, unless it's a crib or something, you know, fish tend to move around quite a bit. But, you know, like we're talking about with a bigger body of water, they have those options. So, you know, down here, I'm fishing a lot of smaller lakes. You know, if the water that day is clear, you know, that's what you fish, you know, or maybe it got really stirred up by a storm, that's what you fish. But when you have that different option, those are things that will change or affect how the fish bite. So that's a really great point.
Yeah. Like for instance, you know, like the area that I looked in, I said was like gin clear. You know, we could get a lot of rain. It's right at the mouth of a creek, and that water can dirty up quickly. And if it dirties up, the fish could just it's like magic. They just show up there. So, you know, you have to go and have a look at it and check it out. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, you know, when you find your right location, what is it that you're using to catch perch, or is that top secret?
No, I made a post on my pro page. If anybody wants to go check it out, it's you know, David Chong, Fish Hard Dream Big, if you on Facebook, and I actually, you know, laid out the stuff I'm using. I like a long rod. You know, I like you know, even though we're using lighter equipment, because of the size of the perch are not, you know, they're not your perch like this, they're your perch like this. So yeah. You know, a medium light is really as light as I ever go, and I like a 7 foot you know, one piece you know, medium light rod, and I use 6 pound braid with a 4 pound fluorocarbon leader. We pretty well jig them, you know, a ball jig with a swim bait, a grub, not like really nothing super fancy, even small little, you know, kind of like 2.5 inch. A lot of people may think they're bass tubes, right? They work really well. And even if you're fishing deeper for them, you can pretend you're ice fishing. You can use, you know, lures like jigging wraps and, you know, puppet minnows from Northland, all those, you know, kind of more, everybody thinks of them more as ice fishing, but they work at this time of year as well.
You know, that's interesting. We're talking to, you know, Bobby and Robin Schindler out in Lake Cascade in Idaho, right?
Oh,
yeah.
I want to go there. Yeah. I want to go there.
You guys both have great destinations. You should swap and fish at each other's lake and see how that goes.
Yeah.
But they were talking about, because they have some of those larger perch there too, and that those fish become a little bit more predatory out there, and that you fish different. So I like hearing that you can use these different, minnow options, something with a little bit more action in it. But on the other hand, on Sundays you use a very basic setup. So that's kind of a really fun thing to be able to go out and choose how you fish. Yeah,
some of the key things that I had found, particularly this year, and I'm not sure it's any different from any other year, but I found it really important to get your bait, especially if you wanted to catch the larger fish, get your bait as far away from the boat as possible. You can catch them right underneath the boat if you're sitting on top of them, but the further it is away and the less boats are around you, I'll tell you, I've tried sharing my screen here and I can't. Doesn't seem to work too well for me, but I could show you a picture where we were fishing on Saturday. There was a fleet. I guess we should call it fleet because they're boats. There was a fleet about 250, 300 yards away from us. And at one point, I guarantee you there was over 80 boats and they were all packed together. I counted 78 at one point and more came in. And we were honestly, we were fishing 250, 300 yards away with nobody around us, by ourselves. And we were literally catching one fish after another. A lot of them were like 12 to 14 inches. And we were just going, I don't know what they're catching over there. And I actually found out a couple of friends were in there and talked to them going, yeah, all they're catching is little fish over here. Some people, a lot of them aren't even catching anything. I'm going, get away from that pack mentality. The thing, I think people really miss out on, it's learning how to find fish, learning how to use your electronics to find them, and when you can find your own fish rather than, oh, look, there's a pack of boats over there. They must be catching them there. Let's go over there. Because that's literally, I think, what all those guys did. They drove up. We watched them come out of the one river and make a beeline right to the pack, boom, boom. And they drove right past us. We were sitting there out there and just catching them one after another. And these guys, and so like I said, I found it real important to get, if you want to catch the bigger ones, to get your bait away from the boat. And the other thing is use your electronics. The fish move around, and a lot of times we had to, we'll catch a bunch and then they'll move and we'll have to get on top of them again. So, Panoptix live scope. I don't know if you guys use Garmin. I don't know what electronics you use, but that Panoptix live scope, I know the ice fishermen are crazy about it, but, and the bass guys are crazy about it, but I'll tell you what, I was shocked at the number of perch guys who were fishing for perch who had, Panoptix live scope on. And it definitely helps you. It helps you figure out things faster. It's not going to necessarily help you catch the fish, because I'll tell you what, later on when people did come around us, we were still catching them, and they came right to us, and most of them were not catching. I had one boat that I could have cast in his boat many times over. That's how close he was. So I actually was casting and dropping it like 2-3 feet shy of his boat, and I pull a fish out from underneath his boat every single time. And he's casting way there, and he's I'm sure he wanted to sell his boat after he went by us, because he just I must have been making him crazy, because I'd cast right at him, catch a fish, and he's fishing away there and he can't. So I mean, the electronics do help you, but you still have to catch them. So you still have to kind of figure them out.
Yeah. Well, and I love hearing you talk about, spreading out from the crowd. And that makes me think a lot about, to be honest, our local waters. There's a lot of people following the crowd is a big thing. I don't know if that's regional or not. Maybe that's everywhere.
No, I think it's everywhere. I don't think people are different. It's just, it's human nature, I think, almost, Well,
I was going to say, I think the thing about it, there's a lot of people out there, weekend warriors, or people have all different kinds of names for them, and they're not always super nice names. But I think what it comes down to is a lot of times it's people, sportsmen trying to get out on the water that maybe don't know what they're doing, and I think their best example at that point is do what others do. And, you know, like you're saying, you know, the best way to catch fish is to spread out. But the things that you probably can learn from groups of boats is, you know, maybe there is some kind of structure under the water. You know, maybe it's not actually that the fish are there, but there's something that bring the fish from there. So, you know, I mean, those are interesting things to watch and see the trends of and maybe learn from. But, you know, I think some of that real true fishing is done a little bit outside of those areas.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you know, you could have a pack of boats on top of a particular shoal, and the fish could be on top of it, and that's where the fish are, and that's fine. But you know, the thing that shocked me, it didn't shock me that so many boats were there. It shocked me that they all stayed there, even when I talked to people who were in it, said not many people were catching them. So if you're sitting with all these boats and you're not really catching any fish, why would you stay there? I wouldn't, right. You know, if we weren't catching fish out where we were, I wouldn't have gone into it. I would have, you know, worked around the outside just to see if we could mark some fish. And, you know, we were thinking going, wow, look at all those boats. They must be catching them really well over there too. But apparently they weren't, you know, they weren't. It was, you know, that's the part that I don't understand. You know, when people, and like, again, you call them weekend warriors, whatever, fishermen are fishermen, but there's people who don't get out very often. They don't, you know, they don't have the time on the water that some of us have. And, you know, we've learned a lot. You know, the more time you spend in the water, the more you learn. And they're always looking for shortcuts because they only have, you know, they might get out one day on the weekend and that's it. And they don't any other time. So when they get out there, they don't want to spend all their time looking for fish. So they think the way to do it is just to follow other people around, which in reality, if they would take the time, I know it would cost them some time, but, you know, if they learn how to find fish, that is probably the single most important skill any angler could have. You know, like I said, I fished a lot of tournaments for all kinds of different species. And when you reach a certain level of tournaments, pretty well everybody can cast, everybody can, you know, work a jerkbait, everybody can, you know, flip a jig, throw a frog. It's the people who find the right fish who are going to win. You know, that's the most important thing. Without the fish, you can be the best. You can be the best caster. You can be the best crankbait fisherman. If you're not around fish, guess what? You're not catching fish.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, I try to stress that to people that, you know, if you're going to work on any skill, work on finding fish. You know, and electronics is a big part of it. You know, most people, even when they don't have fancy electronics, they don't even know what they're really doing with their most basic electronics. You know?
Yeah, that's a really great point.
But you put something like if you follow any of the pro tours at all, you put something like Panoptic's Live Scope in the hands of guys who know what they're doing, and it is like just deadly, just absolutely deadly. You know, so you know, there's manuals, there's videos, there's so many videos on using electronics. People who say I just don't get it, I can't figure it out. Well, I don't think you put in the effort because like there are so many great videos on the internet now that no matter whether you're using Garmin, Lowrance, Humminbird, Raymarine, whatever type of electronics, there's somebody out there who's going over all the settings with you, and helping you figure it out. And if you're not taking that time, well, I'm sorry, I don't know what else to tell you. You're complaining you can't find fish, you can't thing, and you haven't really put in the effort, to do the right things to actually be able to find fish, right?
Yeah. Well, and, I love your point about people learning to use the graphs that they have, because I think so often the tendency is to, need to get new and what's next. But I think that there's so much that our current graphs are telling us, even giving clues to all this fishing, to people who don't know maybe what their graphs are telling them. Start out in areas where you do know what your water is like. Are you sitting over branches? Is it a hard rocky bottom? Is it sandy? And to even just to be able to learn that bottom composition and how that changes. Yes.
Bottom composition is huge. All those transition zones, transitions, it's if you're going to look for anything, look for transitions, where that bottom changes, and there's usually fish around there, right?
Yeah.
So, but I mean, and electronics they're tools, and if you're not going to learn how to use your tool properly, don't know, you might as well not have them. And but it's not the end all. It can definitely help you a lot, but you can look at, a good friend of mine, John Cox, who fishes on multiple of the major tours, and he just won a tournament on Smith Lake. And the last day that they did the top 10, all 9 other anglers he was competing against had forward-facing sonar and were using it. I don't think he turned his sonar on, and he still won.
Yeah.
That's funny.
He still won. There are some people there who are just, super gifted in, being able to listen to their gut and making the right decisions. But all that stuff, when you said, oh, I just had a gut feeling, and then it works out and stuff like that. You know what those gut feelings are? They're based on a lot of experience.
Mm-hmm.
You've seen this before. You recognize these things. It really wasn't a gut feeling, because a lot of times if it is, it's just indigestion, right? If that's okay. But but when you say gut feeling, it's because like I said, you recognize this particular scenario. And last time I saw this, the fish were doing this, and fish are creatures of habit. They're not they're not great thinkers. They don't have giant brains. They have like little pea-sized brains. They just they follow their instincts. That's what they're driven by, right?
Yeah.
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 Well, and with that, shout out to the graphs and the units that people are able to use both open water and ice seasons. Because, again, if you can take that learning curve of that fishing down to one unit that you know how to read, that you can depend on in each season, that's something that'll go a long way as an angler as well.
Yeah. Do you know anybody? Like, I actually know a few people, but when it comes to ice fishing, I don't know how anybody can go out there without some kind of electronics. Okay.
Well, that's funny. That's funny.
It doesn't have to be.
That's a very popular tactic here in Wisconsin.
Yeah.
There's a majority of our ice fishermen that do. I think one thing about it is there's people that'll fish only one body of water or maybe 2, and so going back to just having your instincts, they can go check spots just off of landmarks and knowing distance away from the shore. They don't need electronics. And a lot of times, going back even further in the conversation back to the perch talk, a lot of our fish, they're so pressured that a lot of times just a dead stick is what works best. And so that is one of the main tools that the fishermen here in Wisconsin like to use. And so when you're not having to jig at anything, you just need to pick a depth. And we can have 3 rods apiece, so you just set them at 3 different depths. Whatever one gets hit, then you set them all at that depth, and then you sit and drink a beer while you watch all your rods go down. That's a tactic.
No, 100%. If you're on a smaller body of water, and like you said, if you fish it a lot and you really do understand, you can get away with it. But the people who go out on a lake like Lake Simcoe, which is huge, and don't have electronics, and then they wonder why they don't catching any fish. For me, I want to know there's something there if I'm fishing away. I don't want to be just jigging away where there's absolutely nothing around, right? And if I whether you're using some electronics or whether you're using an underwater camera, you just something to tell you that there's fish there, and then at least if they're not biting, you can change it up. You can try a different bait. Slow down your presentation, speed it up. Let me. This, I know we're well out of there, but this is a great example. I went further north and did some walleye fishing at the early part of the ice fishing season, and we went on this body of water. And a friend of mine who lives up there had been out there on the Thursday, and we went out on the Sunday, and he caught them pretty well in this particular area. We went there, and right off the bat, we started marking fish. And one of the guys, there was 5 of us. One of the guys caught a nice one right away, and then after that, we went probably about 2.5 hours, and we were spread out. We were all marking fish. Boy, we could not get them to bite. It was very frustrating. They'd come in and they just ignore your thing. And finally, one of the guys went out in deeper water. He was in 52 feet of water. And he's going, oh, I'm marking so many suspended fish out here. But again, they won't bite. And he had a Panoptics unit. And this was real cool because I went out to him and he had it on there. Sure enough, a fish pops in at 30 feet. And we watch it, and because you got like 135 degrees, right? So it comes over to his bait. So of course he's got a lipless crankbait. So he just starts shaking it a little bit and lifting it, trying to get it triggered to hit, right? Fish comes. As soon as he starts doing that, fish actually turns, swims away. I said, stop. So he stops it, holds it. The fish turns back around, comes back to it. And as soon as they get close, he starts going like this again. It turns and it goes. I'm going, stop. And I go, okay, this time he comes out, don't move. Okay, so it comes back and I go, no, stop. And he just held it there. We are literally on the Panoptix, watch the fish go around his bait once and then poof, and it ate it.
Wow.
And once we realize what they were doing, I think we caught 15 fish in the next 2 hours because you could see what the fish are doing. You can see how they're reacting. You know, what you have. If you're using a 2D sonar, let's put it this way, if you're using a regular traditional sonar, you would have had a fish come in, you would have tried to work it, it would have disappeared, and you stop, another marker come in, you think it's a different fish. You know, you would have never known it was the same fish coming around. It's only because it never ever left our screen. It went over here and we watched it swim back and forth. And, you know, so, I mean, there is a huge advantage to today's technology, but of course it comes with a cost, right? And I can't tell people they all have to go out and spend the money for Panoptix Live Scope. But if you go to some of the pages on Facebook, like Garmin Ice Fishing, it seems like everybody I'm just going
like everybody, yeah.
Oh yeah, it does seem like everybody has it, and people, you know, aren't hesitating dropping, you know, that kind of money that it takes to get, and they're not fishing tournaments, they're just out ice fishing. And but you know, they see the advantage to having a tool like that, and if you use it properly, it can make a huge difference, you know, to your day, you know. So.
Yeah. That's absolutely. So, you know, we talked about perch. What's up in the season after that for you?
Well, we just had our trout opener. So, you know, rainbows, and I don't usually like going out opening weekend because the rivers here are pretty crowded. So yeah. It's not that much fun when there's, you know, you got to share one hole with like 20 other guys. It's not a lot of fun. So I'm probably, if the weather gets nicer before the weekend, I'll try to get out maybe Friday and do a little bit of steelhead fishing. The crappie should be fired up. They had already been going, you know, well, we're live with Crappie Junction, right? Striker, right? But you know, when the first ice goes out, they come in, they start feeding, and you're going to catch a bunch then, and then later on, about, you know, once that water starts, you know, hitting that mid 50s and stuff, then they're actually coming in to spawn, right? Mm-hmm. And that's going to be happening soon. So I hope to get out a few times for some crappie fishing, and then pike and walleye are probably going to be the main focus, and until bass season opens. So, you know, there's always something to fish for. Yeah. That's why I laugh at the guys who they're bass anglers. They don't fish for anything else, so they're always waiting for, you know, bass season.
That's funny. I was just going to ask, like, what do you have a favorite fish then, or you just like them all?
I love them all, but if I had to, you know, bass is kind of like, you know, yeah, very dear, and you know, plus it, you know, it's made me they've made me a lot of money over the years, so I have to, I have to give them their props for that, you know. but I'll listen, I have just as much, you know, fun catching, you know, a big perch or a big crappie as I do, or, you know, even a big, you know, bluegill or pumpkin seed. I love fishing panfish.
Yeah.
You know, just because usually when you're fishing panfish, you're catching, you know, if you can get size, but you're going to get numbers as well. And I love it when you can come in and you realize you weren't out there fishing, you were just out there catching.
Yeah.
You know? No, really, those. Yeah, well, it's true.
Yeah.
Well, we laugh because on days when we don't, you don't get a super hot bite, you catch a few, but not a million. And then like, we're always like, oh, phooey. And it's like, no, we got to remember that those days we just hit the bite right. Yeah.
Well, and we're in kind of a weird position because like you said, the water, it was similar to you guys. The water warmed up really fast. Our ice just like left.
Oh,
And then we got on our walleye bite. We have some good runs near us.
And it started up.
And then it got halfway through, and then the water got cold again. And so now it's been 48 to 50 degrees, and everything is just kind of like sitting there. Like all the trees are just sitting there, all the fish are just sitting there. Everything's just waiting for it to like get back up into the 55-degree range. And it's just tough fishing right now. Yeah. But it's it's a good learning experience because you can right now, if you don't know how to go find fish, going back to the electronics, they're sitting very still. They're all the fish are staged in their spots right now. So if you read any article or you watch any YouTube video about finding spring panfish, spring sport fish, and where they sit prior to their spawn, you can go out right now and you can use your electronics and find them. You might not catch a whole bunch, but at least you'll know where to start. And then when the next time you go out in the water, you're like, oh, the water's 54, 55, 56 degrees. Now you can start fishing there. If you don't catch them, just move up a little bit.
Yeah.
And just, find the next transition or, the weed edge. It's a very cool time of year to learn your electronics, if nothing else.
Yeah, 2 or 3 degrees can make a world of difference. It can make. It's not even the fact that even if they're there, they can just turn on because of the water temps, right? And but I'll tell you one thing. I was really surprised out there perch fishing this year is, like I said, we've been fishing them relatively deep. You can catch them shallow this time of year, but we've been kind of fishing like 21 to 26 feet of water for the most part, and what we usually do is we go out there and we like I said, we know the general area they're going to be around. So we go out there and then we start driving around our main engines, just trying to mark schools. And what I really found this year was interesting was we wouldn't mark very many fish. We'd mark one here, one there. But if you mark 1 or 2 and you stop and your main engine goes off, and I actually saw this with a friend of mine he had a Lowrance Ghost on his, one of the brushless trolling motors. So quiet. Same with the Garmin Force, right? It's dead quiet, right, when they're on. And once we stopped and we started, all of a sudden you can actually on the sonar, and especially with the live scope, we can see the fish lift off the bottom once that main engine was off. So when you're driving over them, they would actually push so tight the bottom, or they may even be parting like this as you're driving around. And you would think, oh, there's really not too many fish here. But you stop, and then all of a sudden they just start coming off the bottom. And we had a friend of mine one time a couple of weeks ago when we were out. He just came by just to say hi. He was like maybe, I don't know. He was like maybe 15, 20 yards away from us. Just drove by. Hey, I didn't know it was you guys. Say hi. And as he drove by, we watched the fish disappear off the sonar on the live scope. We watched them swim off. And then we had to relocate to find them, because that particular school in that case, we actually had been on one school for an hour and a half, and the two of us, every single cast we had a fish on.
Oh wow.
And then the boat drove by, and then we had to relocate and find them again. So that's again when you've got a 78 boats, everybody's sonar is pinging away, trolling motors going all over the place, guys driving in, driving out. Even if there's fish there, they're going to be tougher to catch.
Yeah.
That's the thing. But it really was I wouldn't have guessed that in that kind of depth of water that they would have been so sensitive to sound, but they were. So maybe it's just one of those years. Who knows?
Yeah. Well, and I'm not a scientist, so I certainly don't mean to go off bounds here. But I think one of the things about sound is that, going through the water, I think they can feel it, to be
Oh
honest.
yeah. Their lateral line is how they pick
Yeah.
up. Yeah. Yeah.
So, there's always this constant, I actually love this in a show, in the show, it's always a trend that we don't intend to happen, but are fish more curious or are they more skittish? And I think it's funny because in almost every episode, there's a case that kind of goes both ways. But, I think that this is a perfect example of, sometimes fish really are affected by their environments and what's going on around them. Sometimes you throw a camera down there and they don't give a darn at all about
they swim right up to the camera. I've seen that. Oh yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, that's the amazing thing. Is it the weather? Is it, gosh, the full moon is going on, or whoever knows what it is. But to have the electronics to find out what that reaction is, that is really neat how you're describing that.
Yeah, when you can see that that kind of stuff, it helps. It really does help you make decisions about what to do, where how long you should stay, and so forth. But fish are funny. Like smallmouth. I love fishing largemouth as well. But if I get down south, I like fishing for spots also. But smallmouth, I actually seeing as you have a cat, I actually often reference them. Reference the people. They're a lot like cats. They're very curious. And that's why, presentations like drop shotting work so well with it because the longer, especially with smallmouth, with most fish, but especially with smallmouth, I think the longer you can keep a bait within their strike zone, the better chance they're going to eat it. They may not eat it right away, but if it sits there long enough, they can only, like a cat, they can only stare at something low and eventually they pounce on it, right? It's true. It's true. Yeah. And so that's a key, My one of my partners who I fish some team tournaments with, he is I don't know how he does this, honestly. It's very hard to do. When we run into a tough bite for smallmouth, and a lot of times clarity of the water, you can see them, and which is probably why they're kind of skittish and a little on guard all the time. But the best way we found to catch those skittish fish is if we can get a bait in front of it and literally just dead stick it there. Do not move it. If it falls anywhere near them, that fish, again, like you said, it's not the sound, but the vibrations. They feel it in their lateral line. They know something is come down there, and they're going to be curious, and they go over it. And he will literally, we see a fish, and he'll fire out a tube in front of it, and he will sit there, and he will not. And sometimes it seems like it's probably only like 2 or 3 minutes, but it seems like it's like 10 minutes, and he hasn't moved it at all, right? And you think, is he not get the fish? And he'll just hold it there. Then all of a sudden, got him. And he's got the fish out, and it was just sitting there. The fish just came over and looked at it, and then eventually it just ate it. And it's again, different days they're in different moods, right?
That's right. Yeah.
I like it when they're super aggressive and they'll eat everything you throw in there. Those are the things I like. But.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah. It's amazing. Sometimes even just pan fishing, and then, they'll just snatch out whatever I'm throwing out for pan fish. It's like some days they don't seem picky at all, and some days they just are. So that's pretty funny. I mean, I guess with that though, here in Wisconsin, our bass opener or game fish opener is coming up, the 1st of May. So this weekend, and I know you set up there, it's not until June or something.
For bass, but walleye are opening in a couple of weeks. So, and pike as well.
So when bass opens for you, what is the first thing that you throw at them?
Well, it depends. If you have see that you get caught in this, there's a lot of debate up here amongst guys, whether it's good to fish for bedding fish or not, right?
Yeah. Okay.
So if you have a late season, especially on bigger bodies of water where it's colder and everything, like Lake Ontario and St. Lawrence River, and that's one of the reasons that our, like I said, our fishery management zone 20 has a catch and release season that's on right now. We never had that. This is the first year we've had it. And it's only open till, I do believe, May the 10th there. And why they did that was they actually they separated the largemouth and the smallmouth seasons. So the largemouth opens, I think, the third weekend in June, and then the smallmouth don't open until 2 weeks after that.
Oh.
So hopefully it gives them a chance to, more of them to finish their spawning and everything. But if I'm in a tournament and it's early season and they're on beds, well, you really don't have any choice. If you want to be competitive, you have to fish those fish, right? Personally, I would rather leave them alone if I can find post-spawn fish, but they don't tend to carry the weight. If you're just out fun fishing, I'd rather, find post-spawn fish, but or target largemouth if I can. If it's a body of water where you can be competitive fishing largemouth instead of smallmouth, then that's what I do. But it's always a topic for debate, because I don't know. Does Wisconsin do they have stocking programs for bass?
Not that I'm aware of on any kind of large scale. There might be smaller instances of it. We have pretty healthy bass fisheries that are fairly untapped because we're kind of stuck in between, the magic land of Canada and then the down south, because and a lot of the Midwest is focused on a lot of the eating fish, walleyes, perch, crappies, bluegills, We do have a lot of bass fishermen, and especially smallmouth, being that Lake Superior and Lake Michigan are so close to the state here. But those are big factories, bodies of water that make some big fish.
Sturgeon Bay and
But no, I don't think there's any big stocking programs.
Well, that's the thing. We have we do have stocking programs for a lot of trout and walleye but the bass fishery, and we have great bass fisheries. We have great bass fisheries, but they're reliant on natural reproduction, right? And it's getting tougher these days because of all the gobies and everything. A lot of the bodies of water have gobies on them, and even if you pull and Bruce Tufts, who's a good friend of mine, he's probably one of the world's foremost experts on smallmouth bass, especially on areas like Lake Ontario and St. Lawrence. He's got lots of video and stuff where he'll show you can pull a bass off its nest, even if you release it right afterwards. Soon as it's off that nest, the gobies, and they've eaten all the eggs already.
Wow.
Even if you let it go right away, never mind if you put it in your live well and wait till you cull it or take it to a weigh-in and everything. So I mean, like I said, that's the reason they opened up that catch and release season, because they were taking 2 weeks away from them during the normal season, and they said, well, listen, why don't we give you something if we're taking something away? And then they made the catch and release open, and lots of guys have been getting. I've been too busy with catching panfish and now trout. Like I said, I fish so many different species. I'm gonna have lots of time to fish for bass. But for the guys who are bass fishermen, they were so all over that and thrilled to be able to go out there and fish for bass in April and into May. So
nice.
Yeah, but
so we got to give you our one question that we always give everybody here. So we kind of warned you. So talking about Striker on a Striker show, what would be your one piece of gear that you would say is your favorite?
Or could you decide one?
Do you know what? It's really hard to pick one, but I'll tell you, if you made me pick one, I would say it's my climate suit, for ice fishing. It's undoubtedly, the best ice fishing suit I've ever had. Actually, I got a Predator one this year, in the days when it's not quite as cold and stuff like that. And, but so much of the Striker gear is great. I noticed they've come up with some high tide hoodies this year, and I just placed an order today for a bunch, because the ones last year, I think they were called the low tie.
I think it's the opposite of that,
around,
but I think
high tide came out last year, and this
they
year's
got
the low tide.
Yeah, they got the hood and they got the kind of buff built in and everything, and the little hole for your thumb to go through and things, and in the summertime, those are my favorite shirts. Those are pretty. I just rotate through the 3 or 4 I have every day.
Yeah.
It's just a different
too.
color, but those are phenomenal. There's so much. My adrenaline rain suit was great. I'm gonna get one of the insulated. Is it the Denali? The new one. Obviously because. Same as you. I mean, you're in Wisconsin. You're not that much better, but we do live up here where, like I said, there was still snow on the shores of Lake Simcoe on Saturday.
Yeah.
So having a nice insulated rain suit is pretty good. But my climate suit. If you made me pick one, that would be the one that literally has. I don't know. I've not had since I got it. I've been wearing mine for. 3 years now since I got it. I don't think I've had a day when, I felt uncomfortable out there. Like I never felt cold, no matter in the worst days, even in, like crazy windy conditions. I can just turn my back to it, put my hood up, and it's amazing, and it's so comfortable. I've had other great floater suits before, but they were so stiff. I'm sure they would do their job if I went through, but I'll tell you what, there are lots of days when I come home, and especially if I'm moving around and trying to be mobile, at the end of the day, I'm sore from fighting this.
Yeah.
You look, and if you were in a one piece, you're like the Michelin man out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The only thing about the climate suit that I have to complain about is that it doesn't keep my line from being iced up, because I can be just warm enough fishing out in that stuff, but my line doesn't like it.
Yeah, same here. Because I do prefer to fish outside whenever I can.
Yeah.
I have a clam, and I'd rather not. If I can sit outside and fish, I prefer to do that. But yeah, that's. Having your line ice up is a pain, and it is a pain. And hey, listen, have you tried? I don't know if you used it in summer fishing, but have you ever used the KVD line and lure conditioner?
No.
Try it when you're ice fishing.
Okay.
Your line does not ice up as much. It actually reduces the amount.
That's a good tip. I always keep a tube of chapstick in the vest pocket or in the little chest pocket there. Sure. And so, because normally I'll end up fishing a certain depth, so then I only have 6 inches of line from jigging it. So then I'll just, when I find that 6 inches of line, I'll just take my chapstick and rub it on there a little bit, and it helps a little bit, but not very much.
Try some. It's great. It's great in the summer too, and that's one thing I would, when I even talked about perch and trying to get your lure away. So I think that makes a difference, because you do get that, whether it's 10% further, whatever, there's less friction on the line. If just that little extra distance, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, that's a great tip.
Yeah. But try it ice fishing. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So I guess we could keep talking fishing forever, but
look,
I
just know that I'm looking at some of the comments here and stuff, and Pete Garnier, who's a fellow staff member with Striker there. Yeah, he's been out for that catch and release season out in FNZ 20 there, and he said zone 20 bassing has been dynamite. So
Well, and I didn't know that Pete was fishing bass, because he's been showing us all kinds of pictures of crappies.
Okay. So here's the deal. Here's the deal. That we actually, believe it or not, we have a catch and release season, but you cannot take a picture of it. You can take a picture if somebody's fighting it and thing, but if they consider, if you hold the fish for a picture, pose it, they consider that retained.
Okay.
So that's why he's been posting the crappie picture. Pete loves pan fishing. Actually, he probably is the one guy I know who loves pan fishing more than I do. But he has.
Well, I know somebody that likes it more than both of you guys.
Okay. Well, hopefully when this is all over and we can cross the border and everything, we should all try to
We'll
get
make
together
a panfish party for sure.
Oh, that'd be awesome. Pete, I'll speak for Pete right now. He's in. We'll come down there, or you guys can come up here and
perfect.
Yeah, but that's why he hasn't been posting pictures of the bass. So he has been.
Oh my goodness, yeah. Well, and Pete, if you're still listening, we got to get you on the show, buddy.
Yeah. Yeah, you should. Pete's again. Him and I have a lot in common because we're both really 100%. I'm in here. He is. Yeah, but he's a multi-species angler as well. He loves fishing for everything, not just although like I said, we end up doing more bass tournaments than anything because that's what there's more tournaments for. So
that's awesome. Yeah. I'm looking forward to all of that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh man. So for, I guess, people who want to follow along in all of these adventures, can you remind us a little bit about your social media?
Yeah, I'm Instagram. I'm Fish Hard on Facebook. Like I said, I have my regular, my personal page, but Facebook only allows you 5,000 friends because that's how many. That's all the number of friends you're supposed to have. I don't know. So it's hard to get people in there because I kind of, if somebody really wants to get in there, I have to kind of look and who can I get rid of here? kind of be selective. But if you go to my pro page, which like I said is David Chong, Fish Hard Dream Big, and if you're on Twitter, I'm Fish Hard Dave. So
and if you're one of those people that he accidentally kicked off of his friends list and you need to be back on, just refresh him and kick somebody else off.
Yeah. Well, the first thing I did was I went down and saw all the companies that put themselves as a personal page and going, just make yourself a regular fan page or whatever. Why did you put it as personal? So I got rid of all those things. That's not what you're supposed to use that for, and got rid of most of them. But still, it's tough. Like right now, I can go on my friend request right now, and there'll be like probably 30 or 40 that I should try to get on there, but I'll have to kind of sort through.
Yeah.
Well, definitely worth a follow. If you aren't following Dave, you really should. He posts some great pictures, and it's a good time.
Yeah, and I'm very open to answering questions. If you if you want to message me on my pro page there.
Mm-hmm.
If I don't answer right away, I'm probably out fishing. So.
Oh, awesome. Awesome. Well, and thanks again for being on the show. I definitely think we'll have you on again sometime.
Yeah.
Love to do it.
Awesome.
Thanks for having me.
And to the people at home, thank you guys for tuning in as well. Always good to laugh along with all of you guys, and looking forward to seeing you in next week's episode of Hook, Line, and Striker.
Night, everybody.
Good night.